Hi, LinkedIn family. This is SaaS on the Street, live from the Auckland studios. I'm your host, Simon Small. It's great to bring this show to you. We're going to be talking every Monday, 6 a.m. here in New Zealand. Don't know where it is, what the time is where you are, but we're just getting started for our week right now. We have such an exciting show coming up for you right now. Thanks for joining us. In the studio today, we've got one of the experts on cloud infrastructure. He knows where all the bodies are buried, not literally, but he probably knows where some of the data centers are that no one's supposed to know about. And it's a great privilege to have him here, and it's a great pleasure. And I was just so delighted to be bringing you this SaaS on the Streets special live from our Auckland studios. We're going live in 30 seconds. Welcome, Sean. How are you? Can you hear me? You can't hear me. That's a good start to the live show. I wonder what the problem is with our technical glitch. We can't hear you. You're on mute. Let's try that. Unmute your mic. It says your mic's not connected. Do you want to just disconnect that headset? Anyway, while Sean is sorting out the broadcast challenges at 6 a.m. in Auckland on a Monday morning. Can we hear you, Sean? Hello, hello? Can you hear me? Hello? No, we can't. It says that you're, I can't unmute you. Your mic isn't connected. So maybe just disconnect.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, here we go. Hang on. Yeah, we can. Loud and clear.
Awesome.
Well, now we got that out of the way. So thanks for joining us. Great to see you here.
Great to see you as well, Simon.
I think we've got, I'm in yellow with a yellow background, and you're over there on the yellow frame. Maybe I should be over there. Is that better?
Yeah,
but
that looks good.
Hang on. If we put our names up, our names are swapped. Our names are back to front. Yeah. Hang on, I'm in the red. Hang on.
Now you need to go back over to the other side.
Okay, all right, there we go. There we go. So what's cooking in the world of SaaS infrastructure? What's hot? What's new?
So everything's going on. Obviously, some big announcements in the last couple months, but probably the biggest one in the last 2 or 3 days is IBM has announced they're splitting up their organization for the first time. So not just selling off a portion of their business, they're actually splitting their business down the middle. That was huge. 6-8 months ago, Salesforce made a huge investment in Soul machines. Microsoft Ignite just happened. So a whole bunch of new product announcements from Microsoft. AWS has every year AWS announces massive numbers of products. There have been a whole bunch of companies that have been purchased recently on SaaS products and cloud products. So I think there's a lot going on, actually.
So why is it so active?
I think the ease of doing things is getting so cloud and SaaS in particular is making business easier. It's making it easier to do new and exciting things. So our timeframes, whereas previously to do something in a software as a service solution are so much shorter than before. So product development used to take years and years and years. If it's a software product now, we can have the first demo product out in a couple of days. And SaaS is and cloud services is what's driving that speed to market of products.
So it sounds like the cloud, in terms of cloud computing and cloud services, let's just talk through how it's got to where it is today, because it feels like there's it's a battleground that for IBM to split themselves in two so that they can go after the cloud. Would they be, because Amazon is just one business, right? Amazon's selling books, it's delivering all of its e-commerce for every product on the planet, just about. And it's got Amazon Web Services, AWS, which is powering about 30% of the internet. So if one guy, Jeff Bezos, can run the whole bloody thing, why does IBM have to cut itself into two and sacrifice half of its business to go after AWS? Is it going after AWS? Is it going after someone else?
It's a good question who they're aiming at, but you're absolutely right, and I think it has to do with the way the organization grew up, right? So if we look at legacy technology, right? So this is something you and I have talked about before, is you have to refresh that technology every so often to bring you up to where you need to be. So IBM started with a business and slowly worked their way up. They bought companies, they created service offerings, and the big structure around their global technology services was basically around the idea of hosting and designing custom technology. So the part of their business that they're talking about carving off is that part that handles bespoke, custom business technology solutions. Amazon Web Services, the entire technology spectrum was designed initially to support the Amazon business. So it's all focused on built in the cloud, designed for the cloud, business architected for the cloud, initiated and enabling cloud services. And so I think from IBM's perspective, so much of their services was maintaining legacy systems, maintaining legacy processes, helping companies maintain their legacy systems.
Right.
That their focus on cloud is no, we need to start product offerings. And the perfect example is if you contacted IBM and wanted to buy compute from them, they would tell you, tell us exactly how many CPU you want, how much memory you want, exactly the way a hosted service would work. If you contact AWS and say, I want compute, they're going to say, pick one of our t-shirt sizes. And so that's the difference between a built for cloud service that AWS gives you what they have. You can't go to them and say, no, I want an M5 with only 2 vCPUs, but I want it to have 64 gig of RAM. AWS says that's not one of our t-shirt sizes. You need to pick one of our t-shirt sizes.
Right. I see. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because the fact that IBM focused so much on legacy, because I just remember working at BSkyB, which is a FTSE 100 company, so one of the top 100 companies in the UK, publicly listed. It's by market cap. And IBM I was doing project management between gigs, and IBM would, they would just ensconce themselves in these public companies, like with, okay, well, here's a $500,000 program that'll get us started, and then we'll work out what the £3 million program's gonna look like. And then 8 guys roll up, getting £1,000 a day, and they're there figuring out what the £3 million workshop's thing's going to be. The whole thing didn't even get delivered after 18 months. and everybody's happy in the C-suite, because they got IBM in, and if they couldn't do it, nobody could. That's
right.
the approach.
Well, and the
it's
reality
money
is,
well spent, because we tried it.
Yeah.
Didn't go
Well,
live, we tried it.
So IBM has gotten some massive successful projects across the line. They have done Herculean things, and that the services company that they purchased and the way they transformed themselves in the 90s, that was the methodology, right? You were a consulting services firm, and your idea is that you get in and make yourself so essential within the business that you could stay there long term. So you deliver some projects that are massively successful. You attempt projects that the business thinks that they want. But again, the methodology around the consulting services in the late 90s and the early 2000s was, I'm coming to you and I have a hammer. So I have a mainframe. I sell mainframes. So the solution to everything is a mainframe. Or,
right.
I'm a database company, and so I'm coming to you, and just put a database in. If we just put a database in, it'll be perfect. Fast forward to now, and now it's no. I have 1,000 products that you can pick and choose from, like a Yum Char menu, and put together what it is that you want. And that's AWS versus IBM. IBM will come in and they'll tell you, oh, it might be expensive, but we'll get you what you want, however you want to do it. AWS comes in and says, well, here's our menu, order what you want. And by the way, we'll self-service it. So that's the key. The IBM will come in and say, we'll bring some consultants in to help you get to where you want to be. AWS will say, no, we have a self-service interface.
Right.
I mean, most businesses on AWS never even talk to a sales guy.
Right. They just buy it off the shelf and put it in.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember them talking, they were down in Queenstown. I remember them talking to me about these new products, like for video editing, the way that I could just buy this sort of infinite storage, not infinite computing power, but just pretty much like stop worrying about video files between like an editor, a designer, and a social media person and you. Just stick it into this infrastructure. Yes, you're going to have a back-end person actually develop this, but say goodbye. What were you saying about your wife's photos?
Oh, my wife has 16 terabytes of photography, and she used to carry around this USB drive until one day the cat hit it and it skidded across the floor. That took me 3 months to recover. But I don't, 4 or 5 years ago, I moved the entire thing to S3 because I didn't want to have to I was having to buy her a new USB drive.
We don't all know what M5 and S3 mean. What's S3?
So S3 is simple storage. That's just their block level storage within AWS.
Right.
So in fact, it was the very first product they had was this, between their compute EC, elastic compute, and their simple storage. Those were the first two products they had. And so, you could just you just go buy it. And by the way, I've tagged all her pictures to go into archive storage if she doesn't touch them within a period of time. And the vast majority of them she hasn't touched. And I think I pay less than $20 a month, New Zealand,
for 17 terabytes.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
And if I was still on that USB drive, I'd be buying a new USB drive at somewhere to $300 to $500 every 2 years.
When you think of what Apple charge you for iCloud storage, is that like, what would that be at a multiple of because you must have looked at iCloud storage and gone, well, we go that AWS route. What's the price comparison?
Well, so Apple iCloud storage is more expensive, but it's an ease of use thing. One of the reasons I chose S3 is because, I just basically do it from a command line. I mean, Simon, you know me, I'm very technical and I can do the technical stuff down in the details. If I make it so, my wife's going to see this and she's going to give me such a hard time. If I made it so easy for her to use, we wouldn't be talking 16 terabytes. We'd be talking 100 terabytes. So so she gets what she wants and what she needs, and she has to cull some of her photographs. She doesn't save everything. But the iCloud storage, because I'm an Apple ecosystem. I'm on a Mac right now. I have an iPhone in my pocket. My wife has iPhone and uses Mac. So she would be putting everything in iCloud storage, and we'd be having a different conversation. The ease of it is why it's more expensive. So Apple, their barrier to use iCloud is what drives the ease of getting into it. And the S3 is kind of the lowest common cost. I mean, I could do it in Dropbox. I could do it in, I could set up a Google account for her, and I could put it on Google Drive for her. But again, I wanted to go to the lowest cost because I didn't expect her to use it very much. And setting up archiving in iCloud storage is much more complicated.
Yeah,
so
that's what I hear. Yeah. Well, that's the weird thing for me, because I was backing something up. You can probably help us here. What was I trying to back up? Oh, that's right. So I've got this Apple Tower, and that whatever they call it, that storage tower, the white cube, tall, but the white skyscraper, and what I can't get my head around is the recovery of your past backups. So the time machine. The time machine. It backs up. But there's a certain point where I can't get back to, if it just keeps doing that and it keeps overwriting, where's the point where I get my old stuff? How do I get my old stuff?
So it's not old stuff. It's not actually overwriting. What it's doing is it's writing differences. So the first time you back up, let's use a document, for example. The first time you back the document up, it puts the entire file of that document in the time machine. But a week later, you made a change to it. And so what it stores a week later is just changes. So in Time Machine, if you cycle back through the time to the very first time you did it, you get the original document. If you cycle back to that week later point, you get the document with the changes in it, because what it does is it takes that original document and brings it forward to the changes that you essentially implements the changes based on how you saved it and gives it to you then. But it's a gross changes to granular changes. So after a year, what you may have is just the original document. So a year later, you've made granular changes to it, and you get just the original document. 3 years later, what you may get is the document as it was, at the halfway mark or something. So the number of granular changes goes away as you back up more and more and more and more. Because I have 3 time machines. I have a local time machine sitting here on my desk. I have a time machine that sits on a network access server that is sitting in my basement, and then I have a third time machine that sits up in the cloud. And that's because I do all of my work on my laptop, and I can't lose. I need to be able to access it. It's not an excuse if my laptop crashes and I have to rebuild my laptop from scratch. The businesses I do work for are going to look at me and go, "Well, you lost all the work you were doing for us." No, I didn't lose any of the work I was doing for you. So I can recover at any point.
Yeah. And are you on a Mac?
Yeah. This is a MacBook Pro.
Same here. Are you on the 16 or 13 inch?
16, only because if I do architecture overview presentations and I'm working on them sitting in a coffee shop. The last time you and I talked on SaaS on the Street, I was in a coffee shop. I've got to be able to see the detail of what it is that I'm doing, so I chose the 16 instead of the 13.
Yeah, I chose the 13 so I could get on a plane and work.
Yeah.
But there's not much of that going on. So you've got 3 time machines. How do you put a time machine in the cloud?
So there are a handful of different services that will do it. And what you have to do, there's a manual process to go through it. There are some add-on products that you can get that will manage those. I do it manually, so I flip time machines at certain points. So once every 3 months, I time machine my stuff up to the cloud. Every time I plug into the machine, I have a external GPU sitting on my desk that has a 1 terabyte drive in it. Every time I plug into this box, it time machines locally, and then once a month I time machine up to my NAS. So if the eGPU falls off my desk and the drive is damaged, I haven't lost my time machine for more than a month. And if my house is struck by lightning and I lose everything in my house, my cloud, I can go back at least 3 months. But it's a very manual process, only because I just don't want to pay somebody else to manage it, since I know how to do it myself.
Right. So with the time machine backup in the cloud, that's not an Apple product though, right?
No.
That's just what you call it, or what they call it, right? Okay.
Yeah. So you can basically, what I'm doing is I'm mapping a cloud drive to my machine, and I'm telling my time machine to put it in that drive that happens to be out in the cloud. Apple iCloud will do limited time machine backups, but not. Again, we come back to a cost perspective. That's going to be very expensive, especially for people like you and I, Simon, who probably have quite a bit of stuff on our laptops.
It's fascinating to me because I was in the business of selling SaaS to large companies and selling the backup solutions and all of that, and I've had multiple failures from multiple. Do you remember SugarSync?
No, I don't know that one.
I worked with a fantastic guy. He and I basically built the Diligent business in the UK, Europe, Middle East, and Africa together. Just I was selling, he was account managing, and he just taught me so much. In fact, in 2008, I remember sitting across the desk from him, and I was just talking about this sort of stuff. And what do you do, Mario? And he started explaining the cloud to me in terms of actual personal data. It's the first time anyone. I mean, the iPhone had been only out for a year or two. Might have been 2009, and he just explained how nothing on his phone is kind of. And this is before iCloud was introduced, right? And it was explaining about all these services to be able to have all his contacts saved to the cloud and come back to the phone. Photos saved to the cloud, they could come back to the phone. And I was like, what? So this phone that I've invested in, that I've got all my shit on, that's not backed up anywhere, could just be a dumb device that we just sync up to the cloud. And it was like, absolutely. And then I don't know when the iCloud sort of jobs thing came along, but it was sort of like, and we've got the iCloud, to back everything up. Like 2 years later or something. It's like, that's a good way to it's a good way to introduce a whole new revenue stream. But the backups, I mean, the backups are complicated. If somebody wanted to get a backup out of the data centers, I would have to say, well, okay, well, just hang on. So your board papers, this would be like when we're selling it. They say your board papers are on our servers, that we own the hardware, we own the rack, we have secure access in a cage. No one else can get into that cage. There's a data center in Vancouver, there's a data center in Toronto, and we do nightly backups, and then we're doing every week there's some sort of full backup going on, and all these backups are archived so that you can get anything. It's a pain in the ass, but if you really, really want to get something, you can put a request in. Like, let's say you screwed up, you lost all your documentation at your end, you deleted it off our servers. We might be able to go into the archives of the backups of the backups of the backups and fish it out for you. But please don't make it a habit. But despite all of that, I've had these multiple failures, and on my person, I just running my life. And one of them was this company SugarSync, and they used to back up everything. Like you could kind of you could name your laptop or your phone or your tablet or your desktop, and everything would just back up to that sort of instance in your login.
Yeah.
And Mario said to me one day, because he put me onto SugarSync, he said, "This looks really good." And then he came in one morning, and he was so pissed off, and he just said, they lost all my data, and
Yeah.
and and I think I kept using it for a couple of years. I'm like, well, might have lost his data, but didn't lose mine. But he was just trying to, he was basically trying to tell me, look, Simon, they lost all my data. Like, they have no credibility in my
Yeah.
world. Like, you're stupid continuing to use them. And so anyway, what happened was I'm backing up everything to SugarSync, thinking life is dandy. I'm throwing laptops away. I've got, like recycling hardware, and I've got
But
everything
you
on
hadn't tried to
SugarSync.
recover anything. You hadn't
Wow,
tried to
worse.
recover
Do you
anything.
know what's worse than that? I wasn't keeping an eye on my credit card emails and billing and all this, and I skipped the billing for 4 months, and boom,
They
it's all
deleted it all.
gone. Yeah, just gone. I mean, I should have just escalated it and kicked and screamed and gone to their headquarters, and I would have had 5 years worth of my life back. But
Yeah.
it just taught me you can't just hang it on one provider. So I'm trying to have Time Machine, Google Drive, SugarSync for photos. Man, it's an effort. It's a big effort. I haven't got it sorted.
Yeah. Well, you're dealing with we have a plethora of options to be able to do things. By the way, there are several companies that are trying to tackle this now.
SugarSync?
And no, I don't know. They might be trying to tackle it, but in devices, backing up the data off of in devices. I mean, look, let's go back to that original conversation you had with your friend back in, I think you said 2005.
No, 2008-9.
Oh, 2008-9. It'd be really good if there wasn't any data here. But the reality is that edge computing means that we're always going to have some local storage, because the reality is that
this is the edge. This is the edge of the network.
Yes, that's right. Or the MacBook Pro is the edge of your network. So
yeah.
You're editing documents. I mean, so the Google mindset, the Google Docs mindset is that you don't actually have any documents on your device.
Yeah.
That was the holy grail of thin devices. If we go back to Win terms in the 90s and early 2000s, was you didn't even have a hard drive in the machine. You did. The hard drive was there to customize the look and feel of it, but you never stored anything on that edge device. It all went originally to servers, but now it goes into the cloud, and the storage is in the cloud. And if you design the cloud right, and so this is the key, digital transformation is not about picking up your backups and stick them in the cloud. Digital transformation is about changing the way you do backups so that they're stored automatically in the right places and you can get them back when you need to get them back, and that you have the processes and you have the systems to be able to do it. And that, if it's done right, look at Netflix. So a couple years ago, AWS took a major outage in AWS US East, and tons of businesses fell over because the only place they were implemented was in US East. Netflix continued working. They had a massive implementation in US East, but Netflix continued working. Netflix had designed their systems to leverage the capability of the cloud so that even losing an entire region in AWS, they could continue working without any hiccup to any of their customers. And that's digital transformation, changing the way you do business. Right.
Let's talk about cloud. So when we listed Diligent in December 2007, some of the early documents from sort of earlier that year said that we had an active server page, and we were building out our technology infrastructure. And basically, it listed all of these projects that were involved in just getting the business to be able to store board papers in Vancouver and Toronto, and all these backups. So like this is our state-of-the-art work plan. Bum, 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 bum. And you just look at it, it's like, hang on, you're building cloud infrastructure and a SaaS business. Like, it's so funny to read the old documents and the way it was explained. And it was all kind of made up at the time. It was only just before the listing that Salesforce started talking about software as a service. It's like, oh, that's what Diligent is. Oh, that's what Xero is. And actually, there's two differences between Diligent and Xero. Diligent had a client app, and Xero hated anything on the computer. Diligent's client app was so that people could work offline, and you wanted directors not to be stuck, and more functionality off a client app on the desktop in sync with the cloud, with the browser.
The browsers weren't deep enough back then. I mean, the reality, Google Chrome has progressed the browser to the point where, I mean, Chrome OS on some laptops, you're basically working inside a browser on a Chrome OS device. But back then, the browsers were, they weren't in devices all in their own. They were almost, they weren't quite screen scraping, but they were, they were display mechanisms. They were the presentation layer of stuff. They were not the running layer of stuff.
That's probably why Diligent had the client and the browser, because it was trying to mimic a virtual book, make it look and feel like a virtual book. You couldn't achieve that with that browser at that time. Whereas Xero was just like numbers and layouts. You could do everything in the browser.
That's right. That's right. Making spreadsheets work in a browser was one of the very first things that were done within browsers. So Xero's application development in the browser, and by the way, Google has progressed this within the browser to the point now where, so if you look at Angular and React and the other JavaScript programming libraries, they're not really languages, they're libraries or frameworks. You can build full-blown applications. In fact, I've been talking about for about 2 or 3 years that the day of apps, individual apps on your phone is we're coming to a point where, why would you develop an app? Why not develop a web application that works on every device, and you don't have a specific app that somebody has to go to the Google Play Store or the Apple Store to download? Why not make your website and landing page an application that works seamlessly across all devices? And that's where we're headed.
It's funny that though sometimes the app is like the front door, and if you're looking for the app, it's like, where do I go? Oh, I've got to go to a browser. What do I have to put in? I forgot. I don't have my. It's not as easy to organize all of your browsers on your smartphone, is it?
No, it's not. There are some people there are some things you can do with Google Chrome, and Explorer that you can. So we played around with this idea that you could have tabs and windows and tabs within Windows so that you could build like an application layout on a device the same way you do with apps. But no, it's not quite there. You're absolutely right. Bookmarks don't replace the organization of apps on your phone yet.
It still amazes me that Apple just keep on pumping the smartphone, because it's still working, 13 years later, and it revolutionized the world. And it's just and the iPad, it's the ultimate form factor still. I'm looking at my desk. I've got an iPhone, an iPad, and a MacBook. And it's become. I think the iPad Pros have really come into their own with the latest version. Absolutely. They're actually usable. They don't chug away the power. Anyway, there'll be some Apple haters watching this. So let's go back to the infrastructure questions. So there's so much to get through, and I can't believe I've only got 20 minutes. So we can go 5 over because we started late. That'll make you late for breakfast. So
God.
and when I talked about the cloud, the early days of the cloud for me was 2007. For you, obviously a lot earlier, but it was, as I described it, a co-located data center with racks and cages and secure access in and out. So what happened from that point forward to get us to kind of the big cloud providers? What were the major shifts?
Oh, well, so there were a whole bunch of papers early on by IBM and Microsoft, and a couple small players like Pro Systems, EDS. ADS wasn't a small player, but Pro Systems was. EDS and even HP that were coming up with this idea that there could be a catalog of services that you could hosting services that you could come and buy. So they created service management interfaces so that you could just log into a website and say, I want to compute. There were a whole bunch of hamsters on wheels in the background. So we didn't have the software as a service really yet. It still required people to go do stuff in the background. But I think there was a team of people inside Amazon at that time that were beginning to go and use these services.
What year are we talking?
2010, 2011. They were buying these services to do their Amazon storefront, and it was obviously exploding. And they thought that they could do it better, faster, because most of those companies, IBM, Microsoft, EDS, it was not a mandate, but they had so many businesses that were so invested in the legacy way of operating that they had to continue to maintain. So that's the anchor, right? Once you're helping a business that has these legacy infrastructures in place, then you have to maintain the systems to do that. And the onus on you to transform the way that you do your business is less, because you're making enough money off of maintaining these legacy systems that putting in a new system that would force all your customers to change and adopt this new way, that the onus isn't there to do it. Amazon, wanting to work completely new from the ground up, began developing these systems internally. And that's where AWS was not, they had no vision that AWS was going to become this cloud monster hyper cloud in the rest of the world. They built AWS to support their systems more rapidly so that they could develop new products and things for Amazon, which was an all online based store. And what they found is there were massive numbers of businesses out there that wanted to do the same thing, but were held back by this legacy infrastructure, and the service providers were holding them back because they were saying, no. The only way you can guarantee everything, so the governance and the security was the lever that, you have to stay here. So you have to have 15 years of backups, because that one time that the CFO wants to see the sales figures from 15 years ago, you have to be able to give them to him. And Amazon, who was a much younger company, could say, no, the CFO can't have a spreadsheet from 15 years ago. That's not right. We shouldn't be designing around that idea.
Right. That's interesting, isn't it? So this is something that I've brought a prop in for.
Look at that. Very nice.
Okay, so I will give away to anyone watching this, and I might leave it open for a little while and announce it on the New York show. I'll give away, or maybe I'll announce it at the end of the day on the London show. I will give away, not this computer, it's bloody heavy. Probably cost me a fortune to mail it. I will give this will give away a double pass to a challenge, a Sell Your SaaS challenge that I'm running. It's 4 mornings. It's all the best selling SaaS techniques that made Diligent billions. I will, if someone can tell me what this is and what year I bought it. Oh, but there's a double pass in it. So what is it and what year did I buy it? You can't enter.
I didn't bring any of my legacy tech with me from the States when I moved here. I had a Cisco AGS Plus, which was the first routing bridge that Cisco came to market with. I didn't bring that. I had lots of old tech that I didn't bring with me when I moved to New Zealand.
I have two Apple graveyards. One is the physical graveyard that is in my house where I had to get that from. It's kind of like a unit, stands about this tall, and I've got it's got the cubby holes, and I've got all the phones and tablets and these things. And then I have another Apple graveyard, which is when I get a phone, I create a folder called Apple Graveyard, and I put all the mandatory apps that you're not allowed to delete. I put that into the Apple Graveyard. Yeah. Let's see what's sitting in my Apple Graveyard to give you an idea. What have we got here? Where's the Apple Graveyard on the virtual Apple Graveyard? Here we go. Health, iTunes Store, books, weather, wallet, watch, stocks, home, Safari, music, contacts, measure, tips, reminders, calendars, maps. All the stuff I don't want. And I'm not allowed
but you can't uninstall. Yeah.
It's so clever. It's like, your phone. I mean, how many millions of people are tapping on those things going, why can't I delete that one? Why can't I delete that one? My phone's broken. I can't delete this app. I can't delete this app.
Yep.
Okay. So, but I want to talk to you about legacy. So the reason I brought that computer in was I started on, here's my other prop. I started on the remember the 512 or whatever, the actual original Macintosh. So I started on that, and then I went off into IBM land, and then I went back to that about 14 years later, that one that I held up, the heavy bugger. And then I went back, and what pissed me off about going back after 14 years was that they wanted money for a software update for the OS.
Yep.
I was like, you gotta be kidding me, you greedy bastards. I bought this computer and you want to charge me for a software update?
Yep.
To like the new OS? I was like, that's just unbelievable. And I just got sick of all the greed, basically, because my idea was to treat my computer like I treat a car, which is just to run it out over time.
Yeah.
And lately, I don't know how lately, I think because my son's just such a, he's only 11, but for the last 3 years, he's just he just knows all the Apple products. He watches the announcements. Yeah. He'll blow away the salespeople when he goes in because he knows the prices and the colors and the this and the that. Yeah. And he'll help my 70-year-old friends with their upgrade options. No, you should get this sort of phone, not that phone. Yeah. This sort of iPad, not that. But one of the things is that what I've realized in him sort of forcing me into the new ecosystem in a good way is that if everything's in the last couple of years, if everything's in the last 2 or 3 years, the problems just disappear. Like where there's friction is when you're trying to get something that's 4 years old to work, and you're going, hang on, my car's broken down. My car should last for 20 years. Why is my car? I paid a lot of money for this car. I don't want to get a new one. So why is it breaking down? Man, tech is so hard. But I've flipped it around now, just in my own life. And I'm just like, because what's happening is I've flipped it around to go, hang on. If all of those minds at Apple, and it doesn't really matter if you're different infrastructure sort of person. But if all those minds, whatever company you love, are pouring into the latest product, that they know what else is coming ahead, and they know what else you need to link to and all this stuff. So I'm just going for sort of maximum storage, which hits like hell, maximum, just basically the number one in the category on phone, iPad, and laptop. And what's happening is there's all these surprises. Like there's just stuff. It's like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. Oh my God, I did that. Oh wow, I did that. I wasn't expecting that. All this stuff that I would never have encountered had I kept, like my car's a 2008 car. My car's 12 years old. I'm waiting for a Cybertruck. I'm just going to drive it into the grave, this petrol kind of thing. But the tech, because I'm also in software as a service, and it just has to be the latest thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think Apple has done a surprisingly good job branding this. They've done two things. One is they've reduced our refresh cycle. So by releasing a new phone pretty much every year, they have gotten us used to this idea that we should be replacing our phone at least every 2 years, if you want to stay on the latest and greatest every year. The second thing they've done is they've slowly increased the cost of the devices. And I don't think they did it on purpose, although I'm sure there's some conspiracy people that will say it was done on purpose. But they've slowly increased the price of the device to the point where we're willing to accept it. Now, this has replaced so many devices that we used to carry. The memes online about here are all the things that you'd have to use to replace it with this phone are really interesting memes. But the refresh, you're absolutely right, Simon. The refresh cycle for technology, but I mean, even in cars. So the Tesla is getting software and application updates. If you have a Tesla, you're getting pushes and updates on about a 3-month cycle.
Yeah,
we've been driving this way since World War II. The replacement cycle, in fact, in the early days after World War II in the US, the manufacturers began designing things so that they would fail so that they could sell the next iteration of it. So rather than building something, if we go back to the early 1900s and the late 1800s, they built stuff to last as long. So let's get as much wear and tear out of this thing as we possibly can. After World War II was, let's build it to replace it. So the cycle of new technologies and innovations, there's an upside and a downside. The downside is we have to buy the new device to replace the old ones. The upside is we get all those new things you're talking about. So if the organizations like Apple, they want to bring augmented reality and they want to bring virtual reality and they want to bring all of these features and functions to the market, if they built a phone that lasted 10 years, they'd have nobody to buy that technology. It's kind of a pull push, right? The manufacturers, the designers are pulling us into a better world as we go forward, and we're pushing forward by buying the next latest thing along the way.
Yeah. I wasn't present to the cost of being on legacy personal technology, and so you're for a software as a service business, let's say these are companies that are kind of growing up fast, rapidly growing. Do you ever, what would you say about the kind of infrastructure policies to have, not just for the cloud, but also in the estate that everybody's working on?
Yeah. So let's set in devices aside for a second. Technology within organizations, the refresh rate has changed. If we go back to mainframe days, IBM had a plan where you would refresh your mainframe every 5 years. Now, it might just be a hardware upgrade, it might just be a software upgrade, but every 5 years you would replace it. The Microsoft and the Intel world basically got onto the same boat with that. and servers began being at a 5-year refresh. In fact, the leasing mechanisms back in the late 90s and early 2000s were all based around this idea of every 5 years we refresh the equipment. So the lease, you could lease hardware, and at the end of the 5 years, you'd lease the new hardware. We'd replace all your existing hardware. I will say that a lot of people didn't actually replace their hardware. They just bought new hardware. And so they had these up-to-date devices that actually had a massive cost on them that they weren't aware of. And so, but the refresh rate has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. The new technologies are coming out, and to be able to accommodate what it is that you're trying to do, that refresh cycle for enterprise equipment has dropped below 3 years. In fact, if you're budgeting, you should be budgeting in technology space to be replacing or refreshing your operating systems and your hardware every 3 years. And so that has to be a calculation within your total cost, but it's not. I look at the total cost. Most businesses look at the total cost as being the cost to buy this thing plus the cost to maintain and support it. No replacement cost built into it.
Right.
And I think that's the SaaS providers and the cloud providers saw that and said it's a broken model. So when you buy software as a service from Salesforce or any of another, there are literally thousands of them. But if you buy from them, you're included in that cost is a replacement cost for their hardware. So you buy Amazon services, part of what you're paying for is at a yearly cycle, they're replacing the physical hardware that sits behind it. And that's part of the cost you're paying for. So for the very first time, you're actually seeing the real cost for your technology. And so
do you think AWS makes Amazon a ton of money?
Oh, so I looked at this about a year ago. AWS is making Amazon money. And I don't remember, and Simon, I would have to go back and look at the breakdowns that I saw. I don't remember if it was the Amazon business is 3 quarters and AWS is 1 quarter, or it was flipped the other way around. I'm not a finance accounting person. That's not my
But it's almost like this whole idea with the set-top boxes that Sky did, or DirecTV, wherever you are in the world. And there was, there's this moment of just getting the stuff out there and getting the dishes up, getting everything installed. And there's a huge investment. Like you're not making money for a long time. But then once you've got an estate of several million boxes and subscribers, and the dish doesn't fall down and the box doesn't crash because it's built like a rock, it's just going to go for 20 years, which is why I got out of interactive TV, because you had all this legacy infrastructure you had to put an app on to make it work on every box out there. We'd have set-top box farms with 40 different set-top boxes from 7 different manufacturers, and every little app had to work perfectly on every TV and every box. So that was not going to work. But I just wonder, like, the land grab that AWS have made to get 30% or whatever of the internet is quite something, isn't it? Like, that's a hell of an asset right now.
And look, I'm sure the finance and salespeople had goals in it, but I think the technology people, that what they wanted to do with AWS, and by the way, Google's in the same boat with this. It wasn't about, we want to be the provider of everything. It was, we want to build a cool place, a place where people can do things faster and better, and have a more control over what they spend on the technology and get those better outcomes out of it. People will say that I'm naive thinking that that's the case, but I've been in this business for 30 years now, and I've sat in rooms with those really high level smart people, and that's their mindset is not, how can we get them onto the system where we're going to make as much money and we're going to own as much real estate. That's not what they're thinking at all.
Yeah. I'll put this screen up. Share my screen here. which is the cloud infrastructure one that we were looking at.
Yeah, the breakdown of what the current.
Oops, I've broken the illusion. So this is the top 4 providers for the last few quarters.
Yep. Yeah, and AWS is 30%, Microsoft's 20%, Google's 6%, Alibaba Cloud, which for those in the US probably wouldn't even know what that is. They think Alibaba is basically Amazon in China, and they don't realize that there's an Alibaba Cloud that's equivalent to AWS in China. And then, everything below that. There are a lot of cloud providers out there. Basically, every hosted provider for the last 20 years is now selling their hosting services as a cloud service. So Rackspace, which is traditionally a data center and hosting company, has for the last 5 or 6 years been selling cloud services within Rackspace, as an example.
Right.
So yeah, that's that.
Okay.
The 37% on this is those little tiny slivers.
And would you say that this obviously doesn't have IBM in there, so and they're going to split out. They're going to split out and put 60 billion with their cloud business. So is that because they're perceived as the legacy kind of guys that keep everything else going in the old estates?
I think there is that perception in the market. I will tell you, a couple years ago, Ginny, previous CEO of IBM, tried to basically say that all their mainframe business was cloud business, and they filed some paperwork with the SEC in the U.S. And I believe the SEC came back and said, no, you can't call your mainframe business cloud business.
You can't whitewash it.
Yeah. So IBM has had cloud managed services worldwide for $10 billion plus companies since the early 2000s. But that's not traditional cloud services. Simon, what you and I call cloud services, and this is what needs to be defined, is there's a web interface that I can go to, and I can self-service purchase services, and those services are hosted somewhere. I have no idea where. And I just consume those services.
Right.
It's not, I have to pick up the phone and call somebody at Oracle, or I have to call somebody at Microsoft to get. So Microsoft Azure, as an example, in the old days, Microsoft has done a lot of services online for a very long time, but you'd have to call up a Microsoft rep or a Microsoft salesperson, and you'd have to purchase those services. Cloud services today I can self-service them through the internet. And IBM has a product that is a cloud service. SoftLayer was the company they bought. I think they've rebranded it, but yeah, it's a small sliver. They have several data centers worldwide. They converted their entire CMS business over to SoftLayer. And it's a good product, but it obviously isn't even showing up in this graph as far as uptake of it. But what may be hidden by that is there may be several $10 billion companies worldwide that are sitting on SoftLayer that don't fall into this. They just don't show up. They don't cause that needle to move.
Right. So tell us about the IBM quantum breakthrough. Let's go back to that.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about quantum yet today, but so the quantum is the next big thing. Quantum is, so people back in the old days being when I first got into this business, a lot of companies couldn't buy mainframes. So they would have to rent time on somebody else's mainframe. And quantum is the next iteration of that. And the cloud and software as a service has now put us in a place where infrastructurally wise, we can consume things, massive things, big data center things incrementally. And quantum is that next holy grail, and we've been chasing it since the 70s.
Right.
In the last 10 years, we've made some significant improvements, and we've got some leaps. Yes, they have been leaps. 60 to somewhere around 85 qubits. I'd have to go back and look at the last. But the big thing is that IBM made an announcement about 3 months ago with a roadmap, which I've never seen IBM roadmap an R&D this way, saying that they're going to be at 1,000 qubits by 2023. So 1,000 qubits, and we don't want to deep dive on the math behind quantum, but if we look at a traditional digital computer, every time we add a bit, we're increasing the number of transactions we can make by 1. So we have 2 bits now, we can do 2 transactions. 3 bits, we can do 3 transactions. Qubits don't work that way. With qubits, if we have 2 qubits and we go to 4 qubits, that's an exponential growth. It's 2 to the second power that we can now go, and 2 to the third if we add a 3rd qubit, and 2 to the 4th if we add a 4th qubit. So to say that they could get to 1,000 qubits is staggering. I've had several conversations with people about quantum and where quantum's going to lead. At 1,000 qubits, the speculation is that if they can do 1,000 qubits with minimal error in the qubits, and errors in quantum, error is everything, and noise in the system. But if they can get to 1,000 qubits, Simon, we can do real predictions. We can do predictions in ways that machine learning have been good, and deep learning have been good, but in ways that we have never seen. Artificial intelligence and interactions. You could be talking to an AI avatar right now, and if there was 1,000 qubit quantum machine running the AI algorithm behind this, you wouldn't know that you were talking to a digital human as opposed to a real human. It's going to be staggering, but it's going to be cloud first. These quantum the businesses, even big businesses, big businesses, and I don't know what that next big business is, but let's say Disney, right? Disney's a massive organization. Disney's not going to buy a quantum computer and drop it in a data center someplace. They're going to rent quantum space, or they're going to buy quantum space in the cloud.
Right.
Because
no, keep going.
Why would you buy a quantum computer and put it in a owned data center that sits down in Florida someplace, if you're Disney, when you could buy the same capacity from the cloud, and you know that the cloud provider, whether it's IBM or Google or whoever else that's doing it, is going to maintain that hardware, and they're going to upgrade that hardware because their entire business is renting that hardware out to people on the cloud.
Well, I should update my graph here, but here's what I've got for you. No, it's not a graph, it's a graphic. When quantum meets 5G.
Yeah.
Because what and in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So
because 5G is the on-ramp to the cloud.
Yeah. This really struck me. 2 years ago, I went to Tiano, and maybe beginning of last year, and our local telco Spark made me buy packages of data, and we went through about $100 just watching Netflix over a week in the evenings. And then last weekend before last, I was down at Monowai with my friend at a very remote spot, and he said, "Oh, it's just got mobile's just been dropped in during COVID." I'm like, really? What's the coverage? Because I had a 3-day online seminar for 30 hours, and I watched the whole thing on my unlimited data plan for no cost, as good as this connection. And you know, it just gave me this sense of freedom. I mean, parts of the world have had limitless data for a long time. America certainly has, but for New Zealand to get all you can eat data, it's a bit like the technology. I don't care what it costs. It's so freeing. And
It's funny you say that.
Takes
When I first moved to New Zealand, we went into I think it was Vodafone at the time, but I think it was Telstra Clear is who I got. But we got the internet service set up at the house, and they said, "Well, how much data a month do you want?" And I went, "Well, I need 100 meg speed." Well, no, I thought he was asking speed, and I said, "Well, I need 100 meg speed to my house." And he goes, "No, I'm not. It's not speed. It's how much data do you want?" And I went, "Is there an unlimited option? Because I don't want to have to worry about how much data. No unlimited option. You're going to have to. Okay, well then we're going to need to be in the terabyte area because I need data. I don't want to be data constrained. I don't care what it costs." And he's like, okay, I think we have this plan that like 1% of New Zealand uses that. Sign me up for that plan. I'm okay paying for that because I don't want to be constrained by how much data I use.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's the thing is that you can call it friction or you can call it constraint. But when, it was very weird because here I am in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand. This thing is so remote. It's where power lines coming out of the Manapori power station on their way to Tiwai, like right past the house. And I was like, hang on, like I'm on this thing for 30 hours a day, 30 hours over 3 days, but I'm getting mobile. I was actually trying to tell myself, hang on, I'm getting mobile broadband 4G bottomless. That means I could go for a walk in the countryside. And so I started walking around with my phone and got these amazing. I find this photo, and it was just like oh, this is what 5G is going to be like.
That's right.
And
here's the 5G. I love the 5G technology, especially the people that are pushing for it, because you're going to be standing next to 100 other people on the train, and all of you are going to be watching a high definition movie without anybody lagging for 5G. Because at 4G, that's not going to happen. 20 of you get on a bus together, 20 of you stand at a beach together, and you're on one cell tower, and all of you trying to stream HD movies. It's not going to work. But with 5G, it will. Oh, wow.
That's where I was. At dawn. It started at like 5 a.m. And I'm sitting there looking at that. This is the overflow on the spillway. Just in the distance on the right is the main canal that actually generates power down to a power station. And this is the spillway that was empty the day before. We had a ton of rain and this showed up, and I'm just standing there and I'm connected to America and this amazing event that's going on in Miami or in Florida somewhere. And I was just like, wow, the world is really going to shift now.
Well, yeah, and you're right. The term is friction. 5G is going to remove so much friction to everything we do from an in-device perspective. So the stuff that we have been waiting for, virtual reality websites, like websites that are completely designed around a virtual experience, are going to be able to be delivered. The idea that you have put too many widgets on your web page, your browser takes too long to load, is gone.
Wow.
That's what 5G is going to do.
Wow. So I think we should probably call it a morning.
Yep. Wrap it.
Yep. I've absolutely loved it. And thank you so much for your time, Sean. We connected. I think we connected when you said, "Hey," I think you had a gap in work, right? And then I jumped on. We did an audio version from a Wellington cafe that's on the Spotify version of SaaS on the Street, and now we're back in person, and it's just been such a privilege and a pleasure to see you.
Simon, it is
really enjoyed it.
I always enjoy the conversations with you. The questions and the insights that you bring to stuff every time I talk to you, it's a pleasure.
Cool. Well, I hope it's been helpful for people out there. So thanks so much, Sean, and we'll definitely do this again. Thanks for rising early, and have a fantastic week.
You too. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, thanks everybody. That's a wrap for our Auckland show. At 2 p.m. we'll be in New York in our New York studios. You won't want to miss that. We're talking to David Bitton, who is a firecracker of an entrepreneur, talking about how to go from Miami to Spain with his SaaS company and what the options are. And we have a mystery guest coming in from London this evening, New Zealand time. They're so mysterious, I don't even know who it is. So thank you so much. Take care. Ka kite anō. Ciao.